saw that I was headed right off the edge of the mountain, and I jammed on my brakes. Gravel was flying everywhere, and all I could see down there were the tops of the pine trees, and they were under my car.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide. In today's episode, divine intervention. I would say as Carolyn and the entire family are about to go off a cliff. We have messages from Mary and a amazing, God-driven ladybug. Yep, welcome to the episode 216. I'm Trapper Jack. Carolyn was actually with us, a dozen plus episodes ago or so, but she forgot. How did she forget this story, Was it your sister that reminded you of, and I don't know why you didn't remember this one, but she remembered it. You want to go into this story, your little traveling story that you had?
Well, it took place about 45 years ago, and for some reason, I just hadn't thought about it in years. And we were talking about some of the miracles that I'd had over Easter last year, and all of a sudden she said, well, I remember when you were going through the mountains, coming down to visit us. And I thought, oh my gosh, I completely had forgotten that one. And it was one of the most life-changing experiences I think I'd had. But the family was going down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and the children were asleep. The three children were asleep on the back seat. My husband was asleep in the passenger side, and I was driving. And I guess I became drowsy, but I dozed off. And we were in the mountains, and I woke up and saw that I was headed right off the edge of the mountain, and I jammed on my brakes. Gravel was flying everywhere. I believe that's probably what woke my husband up, but he reached out to grab the steering wheel, and I know he was planning on jerking it to try to make the curve, but it was impossible to do. And God held his hand right up above the steering wheel. He wouldn't let him even grab a hold of it. And I was praying, God's in control, God's in control. Please help me, God, God's in control. And I just kept saying that over and over. And I was aware that I couldn't stop before I'd hit the edge. And I looked out. I looked out my window, my driver's side window, and all I could see down there were the tops of the pine trees, and they were under my car. And I don't know how far over the edge of the mountain I was, but I'm assuming it must have been at least half the car length. And I just kept praying over and over. I didn't want to lose my focus. I just was holding to it with all I had. And all of a sudden, I could feel the car turning, and I was back on the pavement. And my husband, as I'm heading back to the road part of it, the interstate, and my husband just looked out the window and he goes, wow, and he went right back to sleep. He stayed asleep. And we still had probably 3 or 4 hours to go. Needless to say, I did not get sleepy again. But really, when I think back on it now, I don't know how long they would have taken to find us had we, it gone down the side of the mountain, because it was right over it.
You realize this only happens in animation, right? That something like this can happen the way this did.
I know.
So you are assuming your side of the car, if you will, is being held up. Yes.
By God, that was there was nothing humanly that I could do. I was beyond any hope that there was something that I could do to stop the car or make that turn to bring it back onto the road.
Did your husband have any recollection at all that his hand couldn't grab the wheel? Does he remember the moment? Does he even remember that it happened?
You know, I think I was so stunned, I was glad everybody stayed asleep because I was still pretty shaken up, needless to say.
But he didn't have a recollection of this? This is just kind of like a momentary boom, I'm out again kind of thing?
It was, because I don't even remember discussing it with him. When I got to Charlotte, I remember telling my sister, and I said, this has been the most incredible thing. And I think it was just left at that.
Wow.
You know, you're panicked inside for a little bit, but there was nothing that I could do. Nothing.
Yeah. And physics goes out the window. This is all a God thing. This is just God being God, holding up the car, making you aware of that process. And as you look back, have you asked yourself, why was I saved? Do you go through that, or why was the family, or any of that?
At different times, yes. As I would ponder this, thinking, wow, it was the whole family. And I guess God had something important to still be done. And that's all I can come to the conclusion about, that there had to be something that was that I still had to do, and each one of the children did, and my husband.
Yeah. Recently you were at one of my talks, and afterwards you said, there's another story I forgot to tell you. And I'd like to, and this again is just like, huh? But go ahead and explain this best you can, of something else that happened. And when did this one happen?
Let's see. This one happened somewhere between 2001 and probably 2005. And I used to go up to Michigan to work. This one morning, I'd gotten up and I went in and to take my bath, and I was staying with a friend, and she had a lovely house, and in her bathroom, her shades came up from the bottom instead of being pulled down from the top. I saw that there were 3 little ladybugs in one of the windows. Well, it didn't bother me, and I didn't think anything about it. So after I'd taken my bath, I got dressed, and I went out into the kitchen to say good morning to her husband and get a cup of coffee. And when I came back in the room with my coffee, I almost dropped my coffee cup, because in the window, in the steam on the window.
From the steam of the bath?
In the bathroom, yep.
Okay.
And 2 of the ladybugs, it's almost like they divided the window up in thirds by themselves. And the first 2 ladybugs had been dragging their feathers. They'd crawled up, they'd wiggled all over the place, and then had gone back down under the shade. And the 3rd little ladybug had made an image in the window. It was perfect, not one step out of place. And they were the tiniest little steps that I'd ever seen, a little double row. I could only describe it by saying it looked like quilt stitches. And the ladybug had come up from underneath that. The shade had made the arms had gone out, the head, both arms, and then it had gone back down under the shade without making one misstep. And I ran and got my friend, and I said, you have to come and see this. It's amazing. So she came in, and she's standing there with her mouth open, just like I was. And I asked her, do you think that's an angel? And she said, oh, no, that's Mother Mary. And I said, okay. And I said, do you have a camera? And she said, oh, I've got a camera, but I don't have any film. So there really wasn't time to go to a store, buy film, come back, and be able to get a picture of this before the steam had evaporated. So we both just stood there looking at it until it disappeared. So I finished getting dressed and curling my hair, and I drove into Rochester. And so I was working. And later on that afternoon, she called me and she said, "Carolyn, do you know what today is?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Today was the day that Mother Mary had sent out the message all over the world that she wanted everybody, no matter what time zone they were in, to stop at this certain time and pray for all the children of the world." I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing that a ladybug would remind us of this particular time. So as I was driving back that night to her house, I was thinking, how tiny is the brain of a ladybug?
Yeah, I don't think that tiny brain had much to do with it.
This was just completely amazing. And I thought, there's no way that little ladybug thought, well, this lady's going to take her bath. And as soon as she's through, I'm going to make an image of Mother Mary in this steam. I don't think that went through the little ladybug's mind that morning.
No.
But anyway, every single step that little ladybug took was perfect. And it was an absolute image of Mother Mary. So, and the little arms were out. It was amazing.
Hey, Dan, describe the image. What are we talking about? You're seeing the veiling. You're seeing what are you seeing in terms of her appearance?
If you were standing there as a body with both arms out to the side, that's what she looked like, with the arms coming up and the head. And she had to have like some kind of a veil over her head, mm-hmm. because the neck wasn't defined, but you knew it was exactly what it was supposed to be. And if I tried to describe the width, if you took it all the way out to the arms, it must have been at least 4 or 5 inches wide. And anyway, it was just incredible. So as I'm continuing to ponder this on the way back, and I thought, we as humans have a much bigger brain, to put it mildly. And yet, how much of us would acknowledge that God makes artwork out of our life, just like he did with that little ladybug? And every step we take, if we could only acknowledge that we are divinely directed too, and we're here to express all of God's goodness and beauty and love and harmony. And I just thought, wow, if a ladybug could show this, and God must have seen it as artwork, how are we doing with our lives? Are we allowing our lives to be a work of God's art too? Anyway, it was just an interesting thing to ponder after going through this today. And I thought how powerful God is.
In your previous episode too, you pointed out that growing up and in your faith life, and you've been Protestant, Mary just didn't play that big a role in your mm-hmm. life. And then recently you've had, and what is your episode number? Do you remember?
198.
Okay. And in that you talk about how some recent things have happened where Mary is making herself more visible to you and her role in all of this. So, but this is coming at a time when this happened where, again, Mary didn't mean much. You're asking if it's an angel, and your friend is saying, no, that's obviously Mary. So
Right.
that was kind of like an early sign that I'm coming back, and I'm going to kind of
Right.
ease my way into your life and my role in the world that my son is sending me out here.
Absolutely. And I really feel um, very much guided by her. I, I I can smell the roses so many different times. I ask her things, but I haven't spoke. She hasn't, made her presence confirmed with speaking to me and asking me to do something. But when she asked me to get the word out that she's going to be visiting more people. And with all the turmoil that we're going to be going through in the world, she wanted people to know that if they would just ask her for the help, she would get the message to Jesus or do whatever she could do.
Yeah, in fact, the last time, or at least a recent time, was Nigeria. We put this in our email this week. We have a link to a video from Nigeria. A priest took some pictures where Mary appeared above the church, above the parish. There were 100 people who saw it. There was a Protestant minister who was there visiting somebody else there, and he saw it. But anyway, there's some pictures, and there's a YouTube link that we have in the email. But that's one of the more recent ones where she's appearing. She's kinda all over the place here. But in your case, going back to the last time we talked to you, as it was kind of like one sorrowful mother coming to another sorrowful mother because you had lost a grandson and all the pain that your daughter was going through and everything.
And the first time she came, Trapper, she had gone through the time of watching her child suffer and go through the pain and agony that he did. And she said she could have stopped it if she had wanted to, but she chose not to, because if she had done that, we would not have the way shower that we have today in God. And I told you, that I was hesitant because I couldn't figure it out how she could have stopped that. And now I understand she really could have. Just the more
What's your theory in that? I edited, as you know, I edited that part
Yeah.
out because I didn't want to dilute or do a misdirect on the overall message that you had.
Right.
But we can talk about this here of what that message for you, what that meant, because obviously she is the one who started the clock ticking to the crucifixion. She did that when she said they have no wine. That meant, and he said, it's not my hour. And she basically said, well, I'll bet, because it was like, because as soon as you do a public miracle of turning upwards of 180 gallons of water into free wine, somebody's going to say, hey, we may not want this guy. The Gallo brothers are going to be ticked. You know what I'm saying? And others, obviously. But so she was the one that said, no, the miracle's now. Because keep in mind, her spouse is the Holy Spirit. They came together at the Annunciation, and they're still together. So here's the Holy Spirit in Mary saying now, and then you're saying that another part of that message was, I could have stopped this. What's your sense of that part? Because I've never heard anyone say that. So what's your sense of that?
I guess based on what I was going through at the time, and going through the feeling that my daughter had lost the baby, and I was very upset that I couldn't comfort her. So when you looked at how she answered when I had turned and gone in my kitchen, and it was lit up like the sun, half the kitchen, and I just stood there in amazement, holding on to the counter. And she just had said, I too had to watch as my child went through all that pain and suffering and agony. And if she had stopped it, she wouldn't have had to go through the agony that she went through as a mother in watching Jesus go through that time of such suffering. I have cried so much over that, of what it must have felt like for her to have to watch what Jesus went through. And just to know that sometimes the best outcome for the whole world may be to sacrifice your feelings at the time and allow the divine plan to play out. And I think that's what she was saying, that if she had not allowed the divine plan to play out, that the world wouldn't have had the opportunity to see all the healings that Jesus did, and telling us to go out and do the same things because he would be ascending. So to me, that was what it meant.
Let's pause right about here, then more with Carolyn. But as we're talking about Mary, let's talk about Mary, because my wife and I are so excited that we're going to Medjugorje in October, and just wondering whether or not you can go too. October 5th through the 13th, we're going to be staying with one of the visionaries, Maria, who still gets daily apparitions of Mary. We have access to that. I mean, it's just going to be incredible all the way around. Kind of a dream come true. And I swear everybody that I've talked to who's been there has been there more than once. It's twice, 4 times, whatever it is, it just keeps drawing people back. This peacefulness, the miraculous, of course, is there. Mary's there. The secrets that have been given to these visionaries over the years from Mary, it's all there. So the website, again, is medjugorjepilgrimage.life. Medjugorje is spelled Medjugorje, medjugorjepilgrimage.life. Look for the information for that week, October 5th through the 13th. And who knows, it'd just be so cool to see you there, okay? All right. Oh, quick Patreon shout out also to Dorothy. Dorothy Panacity is one of those who keeps all of this going by helping us out on Patreon, patreon.com, if you want to go directly and search for Trapper Jack, or come here to episode 216 here at touchedbyheaven.net and just click your way through. But Dorothy is one of those that makes this happen, and we thank you so much for your support here at touchedbyheaven.net, episode 216, or patreon.com. All right. Oh, and Carolyn, thanks for coming out to the talks. And I mean, you're into this stuff now, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm a big supporter, and I tell everybody I come in contact with to tune you in. It's so inspirational, and I love hearing the things that are miracles that you just can't figure out how they work.
Yeah, and you're supporting us now, aren't you? Now you're on Patreon. Yeah. You're on. Explain why you did that.
Just because I felt like we needed this kind of information given out to the public, and I just felt like I wanted to support you.
I appreciate that. So appreciate that. What's our takeaway today, Carolyn? You've driven over the edge of a cliff and didn't plummet. You have watched ladybugs do things that ladybugs can't do. What's the takeaway?
Nothing's impossible to God when he's trying to get a message across to mankind. So
shooting off the flare gun, isn't he? Just shooting off the flare gun, trying to get our attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for all the wonderful work you do. I know people enjoy so much hearing these podcasts and you sharing things that they wouldn't have an opportunity to know about.
Oh, God bless you. Thanks for being a part of it, Carolyn. Appreciate it so much. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carolyn. Now, the real reason I chose Carolyn for this week's episode, because I have choices, and it's like, where do I go this week? And Holy Spirit leads. And I told you about music, right? Music bubbles up in my head, seemingly out of nowhere, and we know where that nowhere is. Well, I got a song this week. It's Christina Perri, and it's called 1,000 Years. You've probably heard this. Yeah, that one. Anyway, it's called 1,000 Years. I've loved you for 1,000 years. I'm going to love you for 1,000 more. Okay, I add up the 1,000 plus 1,000 because I can do math. I see a carry the 2,000 years. So who's been loving you for 2,000 years? All right. What woman has been loving you for 2,000 years? Who's been watching over all the children for 2,000 years? What mom? What beautiful heavenly mother figure do we have? And I think we just heard about her. I mean, and it started there at the cross. Woman, behold your son. And to the apostle, and behold your mother. And that's mom. That's her. And we talk about that all the time, our spiritual mom being Mary, and she's being seen all over the place. So that's why we were guided there. The other thing that I thought was interesting, I don't remember when I learned this or if Carolyn and I talked about this at some point, but ladybugs. Why is a ladybug called a ladybug? Because of Our Lady. Say what? Yes, because of Our Lady. Hundreds of years ago in Europe, farmers prayed to Mary to protect the crops because here come the insects eating, chomping, and just devouring the crops. So they prayed to Mary to protect the crops. And that particular year, here come the ladybugs devouring all the insects that were devouring the crops. So here and because of that shell, that red shell that's on a ladybug and the spots and everything, that's often how Mary was depicted in biblical artwork, wearing this red cape and all that. So it looked kind of like Our Lady. I'm flashing back to you, Vladimir. Your episode, I just flashed on it. He had a dream where there was this giant ladybug smiling and waving at him, and it was Mary. And the ladybug's right next to Jesus and all that. I just flashed on it, Vladimir. Just checking in with you, buddy.
Trapper, right next to him was a giant ladybug, huge ladybug. It's kind of like to his waist. But when I looked at this ladybug, it waved at me, and I felt this this love, this unconditional love, just radiating from this ladybug. It was, I don't know. It's just like it's as if I knew who this was, but it was hard to describe the love that I felt. This unconditional. I can see that being Mary, because it was like a motherly kind of love. And I told some of my friends about this dream, not a lot of people. And then right as we were finishing up my last lunch at this work, the lady that was sitting next to me, my friend, she goes, "Vladimir, look at your sweater." And there's a ladybug on my shoulder. And I was just like, what?
And a ladybug shows up.
And ladybug shows up. Not only does it show up, but it shows up at the time when I needed a touch from heaven.
Yeah. Just flashed on it, Vladimir. But anyway, ladybugs were given the name Our Lady because prayer answered. But as we're talking about Mary, I mentioned that we are joining Aaron Chrysler in a pilgrimage to Medjugorje in October. The weather is, I guess, just the most ideal it can be over there. You're not in the heat of summer. You're not in the cold of winter. It's just right. It's Goldilocks. It's Goldilocks weather. It's just right. If you want to find out more about this incredible week, then go to this website. We'll have a link to it in the show notes here. But it's medjugorjepilgrimage.life. MEDJUGORJE. Okay? Okay. And thanks again for your help through Patreon and keeping this all going. So come here also, episode 216, and click through, or go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. Thank you for your support. All right. All right. See you next week on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack, closing out with a prayer.
God's in control. God's in control. Please help me, God. God's in control.